It was really good. So I think that it was more, but I'm gonna share the platform with my
Well,
fellow
that's
students,
great. That
classmates.
is awesome because
Yeah.
so the EDC really want you, like all of you guys, to have your business in Prince George's County. But there is
Hmm.
definitely nothing wrong with finding out that there are other options and places in which you can do your business. That's really one of the intents of the activity is you think you're going to be in this one location and then you realize that your customers are not even where you thought they were, or maybe the location that you're trying to go to is not ideal, even from just getting a brick and mortar or even just trying to operate there. It might be difficult for you to get there and back and all this kind of stuff. So the logistics about that, it kind of opens you up a little bit. So thanks for sharing that,
Yeah,
Bernadette.
but
That's
even
great.
even within PG County, I was only focused on one segment, but I found other segments in PG County that I could, you know, um, I can market to. So it was
Mhm.
it was a good experience for me from that
Right.
perspective. So thanks again.
Okay. Great. Okay. Anybody else want to share? How many people got scared after you did this assignment?
Yeah, that would be me. That's why I was
I was
gonna jump
scared.
in right there. That's the part you need me to talk in. Um,
Okay. That's the
so
part right there, huh?
that part
Okay.
right there. Um, let me start with the good news. The good news was that I understood and learned all of the resources that are out there, right? That I didn't even think about to give you information regarding PG County, the different data sets that they have available for you to look at, in addition to what you shared with us. And I was able to sign up for some newsletters and, all kinds of different things just to really get informed about the county. But what was most important for me to understand was the demographic that I had not looked at, which was the non-U.S. born people in PG County. The heavy population of Nigerians in East Prince George's County, the overwhelming, not overwhelming, but the Hispanic language is the greatest language for the area where I live. So just kind of thinking about in the future, and when I do bring on employees, to make sure that I may have some that are Spanish speaking employees, if I want to expand or scale. So it was just a lot to learn, but it was absolutely a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another one too, is that there are other languages that we normally just don't consider because it's not part of our regular language that we speak every day. And the majority of us, we speak in English, so we're not really thinking about providing services that are bilingual, right? Or even if it's like France or Italian or some other language, because English is our native. But I do think that we should investigate how we can incorporate multi-language in our business. That's one of the things I'm sort of looking at and how to do that because I think even like for you, Toya and Monica, it's like we're working on the solicitation and I'm thinking I don't have any bilingual trainers, not even a SME that would do something in a different language. So that is definitely a an eye opener. Yeah. Go ahead, Lashante.
Well, I know with me, this section four forced me to, I would say, drill down a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, I have so many different areas that I kind of had listed I could do and service and all of the service elements and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I just realized that I needed to bring it in. And this was the segment that made me bring it in to where I had to go back to the top, mission, vision, services, cut it down, and it forced me to focus. So that's what this section did for me.
That's great. Yeah, that's another thing that this assignment will force you to do is to really scale down, like you said, to bring it in and really determine what exactly are you really capable of doing with your business, even if you just focus on one thing and perfect that one thing. Or maybe you just need to just take a step back and say, you know what, I need to do something completely different. But what you don't want to do either is make concrete decisions just based on this because when you guys come back after this short break, you will have to do the other half of this research assignment. So I know Toya was up here telling you guys, but you're going to have a break this week from doing an assignment. Other than just, thinking about your pricing plan, which I'm pretty sure everybody loves to talk about how much they're going to charge people. But this week, we're really going to be focusing on what is it really going to take for you to get financially in a position. So, like last week, we had Sharon and we had Leroy and me talking about putting yourself in some sort of financial wealth position so that you are, as an individual, is taking care of yourself first. Before you even do a business, before you take care of anybody else, you need to be in a financial situation where you are creating wealth, whatever that wealth means to you for your personal life, right? Number one, and for your business, because the truth of it is you cannot manage a business credit card or any kind of loan from the SBA or any kind of grant funding, even if they gave you a grant and you don't have to pay it back, just the responsibility of that alone, knowing that you got to produce something for that money. If you are not organized in terms of your relationship with money, you're going to have a tough time trying to manage your inventory. You're going to have a tough time managing your bookkeeping, keeping records that really will impact your ability to get opportunities in the future. I cannot stress enough how important that is. Depending on the opportunity that will come to you, whether that be a private solicitation or a work for hire, if it requires you to show your financials, you're going to need to be able to pull out a sheet of paper or a spreadsheet or some sort of booklet that shows your your cash flow or your profit and loss statement and things like that. Okay, hang on. Let me see. Lauren is having trouble getting into the class. Let me send her this link. Let me send her because for some, and that's what I was having trouble. Um, Let me just reply back to her.
That was me last week. It's like I gotta go all the way to the beginning to find a link.
Well, I
Yeah.
I think I think that the people are clicking on that first part of the link that adds it
Mhm,
to your calendar as opposed to scrolling down just maybe a tad more. But I
mhm.
just sent her the link, so she should be joining shortly. So I say all that to say is that this week tonight we're going to be having Miss Ashley Williams on here today, and she is actually going to be you know talking about creating a budget, understanding how you going to like manage your money, right? And then we're going to follow that with after our short break Ken Alozie is going to be joining us, and he is the guy that talks about business finance. How do you get credit from a bank? What are they looking for? Now, he's not going to say, oh, fill out this application and do this. He's actually going to come at the position of this is how you need to position yourself if you plan on going to a bank, a credit union, or a small business funder to get any amount of money, right? And so that is going to be the majority of the conversation tonight. What's going to happen here in week 6 is that you guys are not going to be doing no research, so you get a break. However, there are going to be some handouts that I'm going to give you to work on your own that you can use toward your final presentation. I'm going to give you a spreadsheet that you can use to map out your budget. I'm going to give you something that you could probably use the same thing to map out your startup costs, because when you're talking about your business and what you need to do, you need to figure out how much money is it going to take for you to even start. What licenses you got to pay for, what certification designations that cost money, how much is your inventory, how much is your website, your domain, your email, your PO box, how much money you got to put in your bank, all those type of things that cost money before you can even say your doors are open, right? So we're going to have those conversations. So I encourage you to, you know, when you hear something, raise your hand. Let's have those informal conversations. And we're going to go ahead and get started because we got a lot to do. So, Ashley, if you're ready to share your screen, or I can share your screen for you if you want me to, just let me know. And we're gonna get going.
Okay, I'm not that tech savvy, so let me pull up these slides here. And then, okay, all right, I have my slides up.
So there's a share button. If you want, I can share it for you because I have them up right here.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, you do the slide. And then I'll just say next and you can move on to the next slide, I guess. That's how
Yep,
that'll work.
yep, that's
Yes,
how
I
that'll be.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem, not a problem. So
Okay.
we're gonna go ahead and get this party rocking. All right, the floor is yours.
All righty. Good evening, ladies. I'm assuming I look, let's see, we're all ladies, or if any gentlemen on here. Good evening.
Mm.
Um, I'm excited that you guys are here because a lot of times the money conversation, that's a difficult conversation to have. And you want to make sure that you are developing systems and putting things in place so that that won't be a difficult conversation for you to have. You will have all your ducks in a row. All right, so smart money management for self-employed professionals. And I'm Ashley Williams. You can go on to the next slide, and tell you a little bit. It should be a brief introduction. Wow, that's what they do with these new pictures. That's me. That's what they say once you do all that little, yeah. So I've been in the industry, in the financial industry, over 20 years. I did mortgages and insurance, help small businesses, help operate small businesses. And now I'm in education. So it's like I'm just merging the two together. Teaching, well, during the daytime, I teach the young ones, but at night, I teach the adults some things and some tools and some tips to help you be successful in what you're doing.
Just 1 second.
Yes,
Who's
ma'am.
online that's named iPad 3 or iPhone 3? Can I get your name, please?
Well, that might be me. I'm Lauren.
Oh, you're in 2 times? Okay.
Oh no, it shouldn't be. It should just be one.
Okay. Yeah, if they don't answer, they're going to get disconnected. Okay. Keep going.
Okay, we can go on to the next slide. All right, so some of the financial challenges of being self-employed, a lot of times we have irregular income. You have your good times, you have your bad times, you have just your stagnant times, right? And you got to plan and properly have things in place to help you during those times. And as a self-employed individual, you don't have anyone that's created that retirement for you. No one's paying into your pension or has that structure. You know how they match it or anything. So it's all on you to plan for the future. And sometimes while we're on the ground, we sort of forget that we don't have that forward thinking. So that's always important to keep that in front of you. And you have that tax responsibility. So it's important to make sure as a self-employed person that you have a good tax person on your side. All right, because it's good to have those things in the beginning because you don't want to owe Uncle Sam or have any problems with tax. Trust me. And your income depends on you. So you want to make sure that you have things in place. If anything happens, you can't work, you want to make sure that your business runs and it operates, while you're recuperating or whatever it is you have going on. And like your benefits. You want to make sure that you have, some of us, I know you may still have a full-time job or you still have benefits, but those of us that are really rocking and rolling self-employed full-time, you want to make sure that you have proper health insurance, disability, long-term care, things like that put in place to protect yourself and to make sure the income is still flowing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times, guys, you want to put in place that if you are relying on or forgetting that when you leave your business, those benefits don't come with you unless you're
Yeah.
able to afford those benefit premiums. A lot of times you don't think about how much the organization is paying toward your benefits. You might be paying $200 for like your health benefits, but they're paying the other $1,200 or $1,400 in
Yes.
addition to any other benefits that like your life insurance and your death and dismemberment or something like that. You're only paying a fraction of what that organization is paying. And once you become a full-time self-employment person, you are now responsible for your own health benefits, your own dental, your own vision, your own life insurance. Those things do not follow with you when you leave a 9 to 5 job. So when you're doing your business full time, these are things you're going to have to figure out and consider on how your price points, those price points for your services is what's going to help feed your benefits. So I wanted to really stress that point, right?
Yes. Good job. Thanks, Ann.
Mhm.
All right, next slide. So, as a self-employed person, you want to come up with this strategy. You want to make sure that you have and you know what you need for your short-term expenses, like your rent, whatever things. Maybe you have a physical place, your rent, things like that. Your materials, anything like that. Your midterm expenses are things like if you're hiring people, if you're when you're developing your infrastructure, like technology, expanding your marketing, things like that. And your long term, you want to make sure that you are thinking about your retirement. So you want to focus on making sure that you allocate for these things and that you have numbers. You always want to know your numbers. You want to know your numbers because like I guess the gentleman that's coming on next, when you go to um, look for investors or to get loans, they want to make sure that you know what your financial state is and that you are allocating for all of these things and that you have future projections, you know what your minimum monthly budgeting is. You want to know these numbers. You want to make sure that you are on top of these things as a self-employed small business owner.
Yeah, I want to add too. Now you brought up a good point, Ashley. Um, One of the things I realized, depending on who you're collaborating with, meaning like the company who you're going to be doing the work for, sometimes they want an operating budget and then they want a program budget. Right? So your operating budget is like your staff or your supplies and things that you do to operate your business. And then you have your actual program budget, which is how much is it costing for you to run a specific program or service, right? So especially if you're a nonprofit, you're definitely going to have the two for sure, right? Any comments on that? Any questions or Ashley, any more you want to add to that?
No, we can move on to the next one. I think this is
No.
something.
And I'm sorry, I do have a question
Yes,
before
ma'am.
we move on. You
Mhm.
said operating budget is your staff and supplies, and the program budget is what it takes to actually run the program,
Right.
which I would see as being staff as well. So can you give some examples of what
Mhm.
would go on a program budget?
So, for example, it might cost me $60,000 to just have people on staff to do administrative work, to make calls, maybe do my marketing, maybe have meetings. Those are things that we do on a regular day-to-day basis. And then you have the actual program for a Pacific service. So let's say the small business course is a Pacific service. I still got to pay the consultants. I may have to pay for special concessions like a room or food or handouts, maybe printing stuff, shipping stuff, maybe travel, like travel arrangements like hotel, car, and gas, things like that, that is actually specific to the program that is being served to the customer, right? When you're doing a nonprofit organization, for example, um, you may have to come up with those two budgets so that they can see which one is being used by the organization and which one is going to the community. Because most of the time, they're only going to give you funding for those that are going directly to the community. They actually want to see more of the program budget than they do of the operating budget, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Karen. You have a question.
Um, for nonprofits, don't you sometimes have to also look at how much you're spending so that you're staying within a certain percentage, of your budget?
Yes, and that's yeah. So Ashley, you want to talk about that some more?
Well, I'm not versed in the nonprofit area. So that's, I think you know more about
Okay.
nonprofits than I
Yeah.
am.
But yeah,
Yeah.
but as far as the budgeting, I would say budgeting, regardless of what entity you are, is just making sure that if you're tracking or you're telling people about spending, of course, they're going to want to know what you're spending operationally that's going to meet that thing. But what I'm finding out is that the donors, the people who actually donate the funds, or the companies who are raising money for these programs are making sure that that money really goes to the community. That's why you still have to show what you're doing to operate your business, to show what you're spending from stamps to staff. But if you're getting something that's for your operating and your program, you may have to go to like one of these philanthropic organizations that have foundations that will fund you for that. But when you're coming out for the first time, they want almost every dime to be justified to the community, leaving you home almost nothing for operations. But you still got to show that it's a need. And sometimes after the first and second time they fund you, they will give you more money so you can add to your operating budget. Okay. But you gotta keep strict records of everything.
Yeah. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
And I believe that leads us to this next one. Yes. So
Mhm.
you definitely want to make sure you separate your business from your personal finances. And sometimes as a small business, we might collect money from someone and you say, hey, I'm about to run to the grocery store. Let me just spend this money that I got, blah, blah. And we kind of mix and mingle and we don't realize that we're doing that. So we have to be careful. Like Ann was just stating that you have a nonprofit, they want to know what they want every penny allocated for. So you definitely want to make sure you have separate bank accounts, separate credit cards. You track your business expenses and you pay yourself a salary from your business. Document that. And that will help you as well as when you go to say if you want to get a mortgage and you want to use that income, if you're not really properly paying yourself, you can't track that. You may not be able to use that if it's your I don't like the term side, but if you have, like you may still have your government job and you're doing this, on the side right now. If you wanted to use that income, you have to show that one, pay yourself a salary and make sure that you're properly paying taxes. But you definitely want to make sure that you are keeping these things separate. So get your separate bank account. If you're using credit cards, make sure you have your business credit card separate from your personal. Don't intermingle the finances. And sometimes as a small business owner, we that can get a little gray, but make sure you're definitely keeping things separate and making sure you're properly tracking your receipts and maintaining separate entities when it comes to your personal finances and your business finances.
Okay,
Any
great.
questions?
Karen, you have a question?
I just wanted to add also if you're licensed in a certain profession, you cannot commingle funds. Like
Yeah,
then you'll
definitely.
hit ethical violations for commingling funds.
Definitely. That's a good that term commingling. You don't want to do that. So, and a lot of people get in trouble commingling, and we don't want to do that. We definitely want to
Right.
keep, yeah, definitely keep aware
Yeah.
of that.
Yeah, I would
Um,
also add that if you decide that you want to be a sole proprietor, you definitely don't want to commingle nothing. It's just better to just get yourself a EIN number, open up a
yes,
separate business bank account so that you don't commingle your money. Now, once you start getting established and you have really good bookkeeping records, there's going to be times where you may end up transferring money between the two because it might be an emergency or whatever. But when you do that, you're still commingling funds if you're not, able to track that stuff. You got to be able to come up because you never know. For nonprofits specifically, the more money that's donated to you puts you at a higher probability that you're going to need to be audited almost every year for the monies that you are receiving in grant funds, especially when it's more than $50,000 to $100,000. Most funders are looking for a audited 990, which is your uh your actual income tax records. When you're getting anything under $50,000, you can just pretty much file a note card, but that doesn't mean you still won't be audited. It just means that you only earned less than $50,000. You still got to keep good bookkeeping, and you still have to track where those donor funds go. Part of how you can do that is that if you're a nonprofit, you can send letters to people who have donated to you so that they can not only write it off on their taxes, but you also have a paper trail of who actually sent you money, right? So you can actually keep track of that, so you got to come up with some sort of system in order to do that. And when you're a nonprofit, and the reason why I'm hopping on this, because in order to make money from a nonprofit, you have to do exactly what Ashley said. You have to actually pay yourself as a salary. You can't just take the money out of your bank and say, okay, well, this is my 51%. That doesn't exist in a nonprofit. It doesn't. It just doesn't exist, because a nonprofit belongs to the board of directors, and anyone that's part of the board, if they're trying to get paid, should be either a 1099 or a W-2. So you got to make sure you be careful not to get yourself into financial straits. So let's not do that.
Definitely don't want to do that. And I just want to piggyback on what Ann said. You definitely have to have systems in place. As a small business owner, you have your systems in place as far as whatever your service or your merchandise. You definitely need to have good financial systems in place to track your money so that you'll know your numbers and always are abreast of what's going on with your business. All right, there you go. Because with one of the biggest hurdles as a small business owner, excuse me, your irregular income. So you always want to make sure that you know your minimum monthly expenses so that you know what you need to operate monthly. That way that can help you when emergencies come up, that can help you during your off-peak time when your income is not as flush. Make sure you know what you need to operate and to keep your business afloat, and pay yourself a consistent salary. Make sure your business is operating enough to pay that salary. Even if you have to invest it back into your business, make sure that you can track that you're giving yourself a salary, and make sure that you are saving during your strong months so that when things get things get tricky, you have something in your emergency fund. You definitely want to make sure that you're doing that as a small business owner. Make sure that you don't spend everything that comes in, to make sure that you are properly saving for emergencies and when unexpected expenses.
Okay, great. Kendrick, you have a question?
Yes, good evening to all. Miss Ashley, when you said make sure that you save excess income during strong months,
Yes,
are you referring to um, saving in the business accounts or saving out of your personal accounts, out of your salary?
I would say you're saving in your business account for future business expenses. That's separate from your saving for your personal. You kind of understand what
Understood.
I'm saying? Yeah.
Understood. Thank
Uh-huh.
you.
Yeah. Kind of adding to that is, so like, for example, for my own personal like income, I try to save a percentage, even if I only have like 20, I don't care if it's $25 or even the $5 challenge where you might spend $11 and then you round it up to 15, and whatever the difference is, you just put it in your savings account and you don't go back to it. However, you can save whenever your money comes in. Figure out, like she said earlier, figure out what your monthly expenses are personally. You can do the same thing for your business. Figure out how much expenses are they going to take you every 30 days to do what you got to do. And then if there's money that's left over, put that in the business savings account, just like you would do savings for yourself. Put it in a separate savings account. So if you need to do something with your business in the future, you have funds that you can draw from. right? What I'm finding is people get that daggone that profit, like right there, right, Ashley, get that profit, and
Yes.
before you know it, it's in your pocket, and you done gone
Yeah.
shopping, and then when the opportunity comes for you to do something, you don't have no money to run your business, and then you
Yes.
looking for a loan or what have, or you milking your own savings, which you're supposed to be using for your own self to float your business, or maybe using your credit card or whatever, right? You don't want to be relying on your paycheck to run your business. You want the money from your business to float your business.
Yes.
Okay. If you can
Definitely.
get it there. And you always want to have a contingency because you never know when you're going to need to get something, pay something, you just never know. So treating your business budget is like treating your budget for yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. Any more questions?
Yeah.
Comments?
Yeah. These are great
Okay.
questions.
Yes.
I see everybody thinking. I see thought bubbles happening everywhere.
And that's
Yeah.
good. I like the questions because it helps me, improve and things like that. I like that.
Mm.
All right. So your goal is to build that emergency business fund. You want to have at least 3 to 6 months in reserves in case of anything during your slow season. Like I said, equipment. And a lot of times we do things online, but whatever it is, you want to make sure you have some reserves to keep your business running. Okay, we can move on to the any questions. So we're going to give you some strategies to help you with that. Now, you are your most valuable asset. So you want to make sure that you have strategies in place to protect you, your health. All right. And God forbid anything happens, you want to make sure your business is running and you still have cash flow coming in. And there are some things that can help you with that. There are certain types of policies that are geared towards small business owners. You can turn to the next slide. Any questions on any of these things here
Okay,
before we
so
move on?
so so one of the things that I have access to, guys, that I'm going to share with you is certain specific products that was I guess was made aware when I had another person that talked specifically about insurance, where he's talking about how you can get policies that will help you if you have loss of income, or if you have loss of product, or maybe you're at a facility and your facility may have gotten damaged and things of that nature. And this is something outside of the scope of just regular business insurance that you normally hear and see, or maybe life insurance, which is on a different scope, right? Um, so based on what it is that you're trying to do, and where you're going to be operating, that's why doing that part in section 3 and 4 is important. If you are going to be paying for a facility and you know that you're going to need to pay that lease every single month, if you get sick or you get hurt, you need money that's going to help you, whether that be short-term disability, long-term disability, life insurance products that's going to help you sustain your business, keep that lease payment going until you actually start working again. Because if you get sick, the lease payments are not going to stop. Those payments are going to keep rolling, right? And so you also have to look at the fact that anything can happen to anybody at any time. So you have to make those contingencies, for yourself, especially when you are self-employed, right? You have to treat yourself as the CEOs that you work for. They have to offer
Yes.
you benefits for those type of contingencies, right? So just think about that. If you were working full time right now, what insurance company could you afford? Based on how much money you're generating every single month with your business, if it's generating on a consistent basis, right? What would your disability benefits look like? How much is it? If you get hurt, are they going to be able to pay for your hospital? You know what I mean? Are you going to be able to have money enough to pay your rent, pay your utilities, all that stuff, right? So,
Yes.
mhm.
Yes.
Those are key things. So I know
Those
we don't
are,
really talk about that. These are things we got to talk about, right?
yeah, we definitely have to talk about that. And
Yeah.
I'm gonna briefly touch on, there is things out there that you can use for your life insurance as a financial strategy. There's policies that have that long-term care. God forbid something happen, you can access funds to help business run, help pay for any medical expenses. These policies also have a cash accumulation aspect, whereas you need to borrow money for your business. You can there's some tax advantages there. You can borrow money and you're borrowing money from yourself. It's like they call it just being your own bank. You can borrow from it, and there are tax advantages to those as well. And they have that long-term care, and it will help you in the long run. If anything happens, cancer, heart attack, stroke, you can definitely keep your business running, and you have money to come in to help your family. Anybody that is dependent on your income, they will be able to access this, to help things function and flow.
Okay. Lawanda, you have a question, Lawanda, and then Monica.
Yes, outside of the health insurance and life insurance, I think you briefly touched on the business insurance. And as you're starting to build your business, does it make sense to start looking at that? I'm just asking because I'm noticing in different RFPs or proposals, they're asking about certain business insurance requirements. Should that be a part of your
Yes,
budgeting?
you definitely should have that in your budget. Say if you need to rent spaces or you do certain things, you definitely want to have that business liability insurance. And sometimes they ask you for those things. You definitely want any insurances that you need. You definitely want to have that. Now that's something you want to have, and not needed, but needed. And you don't want to need it and not have it. So definitely make sure that you have any proper business insurances that you need. Like if any of you are handling food, or if you make products for folks, you definitely want to have some sort of insurances put in place.
Yeah, so there are two types of business insurance. You have your general liability and you have professional liability. General liability covers things like accidents and, damages and things like that. And then you have professional, which is errors and omissions. So if promise something and you can't deliver it, or maybe you had something on your website and it was an error and someone wants to call you out on that, the whole point of the insurance is so that they cannot take you to court and try to get you to pay damages. It's really there for them to be a buffer between you and the customer. So, in order to get business insurance, you can get it fairly easy. It will cost you less than $100 for both of them. And you can also get stuff like workman's compensation for yourself. Even if you don't have any employees, you can actually get it for just yourself. And then you can also get cybersecurity insurance if you have customers flowing through your website and you want to protect their PII. You can get cybersecurity insurance as well. It will probably cost you less than $150 a month, but that is a cost that you will put into your startup. So when you start looking at startup costs, you start adding stuff like that to your budget to see, okay, is it going to cost me this much per year? So you look at yearly costs, monthly costs, sometimes quarterly costs, depending on if it comes in every quarter or something. But you definitely want to have some sort of mechanism. And one of the things I'm going to share with you is a spreadsheet in which you can use as a budget tool to do that. Yep. So, Monica, you got a question?
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, thanks. My question is around, you were talking about like long-term and life insurance and all of that. If you
Mhm.
have that, as a business owner,
Mhm.
do you have to have that for the business if I already have it for myself personally, or does the personal, would it cover both?
If you have that for yourself, you already have something like that. Yeah, you're good. You're
Okay,
good.
so you don't have to
Mhm.
have something that's for the business, is what you're
No,
saying. Yeah, okay,
no.
okay, great. Okay, thank you.
So to get more specific about that, so like what you'll have for your estate planning is that you will have your will, right? And That's what usually most people start off with is a will, right? And then for that will, you will have, stuff in there that points to a representative who would take care of your personal effects if you should, God forbid something happens to you. And with a will, most of the times, depending on the state that you're in, may or may not be filed with the state until after your death, right? So, for example, in DC, they do not want to see the will until after you have passed. However, if you have a trust, then that's a more of a private document that you can use to transfer your assets directly to your heirs without having to go through probate. Wills go through probate because everything has to be validated and it takes a long time and you have to pay for lawyers, which will drain all your money.
Yes.
But
Yes.
if you were to get a trust, you can put your assets, your house, your jewelry, your cars, and all those things. And then the person who is the trustee, for example, for me and my uncle, I'm my uncle's trustee. I can go to his bank, I can go to wherever he has assets and have control of those things and pass it along according to what's in his trust. Now you would take that along with your operating agreement, okay? And you will build in provisions that will designate what will happen to your assets, including your business, in your will and trust. Okay, does that make sense, guys? So if your life insurance, if something happens to you because you are the person, so the business itself would not have life insurance, only the owner would. So if something happens to you and your trust or will says that this would needs to happen to your business, then your representative will handle all of the stuff that will happen to your business, from your registration being taken down to closing your business bank accounts, or you can pass that business on to your family members where they will decide if they want to keep the business or disillusion the business. Okay, Kendra, you have a question, then Bernadette.
The question is, um, do you have any information about IULs? What are they? I've been on social media and I've seen well, let me start here.
Mhm.
The business that I'm attempting to start is around transportation and tractor trailers.
Okay.
And I've seen where a gentleman had come on advertising where he had scaled his business up and purchased more trucks, where he used his IUL as his own bank, borrowed from himself. So my question is, do you have any information about IULs? Um, are they any good? Is what did I hear on social media? Was that just a bunch of malarkey? And does that correspond to anything that we're speaking of right now as far as um, insurance and so forth? Thank you.
I believe that's on the next slide, Kendrick. You can then move on to the next slide. And no, it's not on there. Okay, well, yes, I do know a little about IULs, and they can be the tricky thing with IULs, they have to be funded correctly. All right. They can be a great thing or it can be your worst nightmare, but they have to be funded properly. You have to know what you're doing, you monitor it and make sure that you are just funding it properly. But yeah, definitely, if used correctly, that's one of the products that I had in mind when I'm saying for a small business owner for your own banking, to be your own bank. Definitely. If you fund it correctly, you would definitely be able to fund your business, borrow during emergencies, but you definitely, here it is, yeah. Um, they have tax advantages. They it can definitely supplement your retirement. So if you have the funds to fund it correctly, the IUL can be a very, very good tool for entrepreneurs. So definitely, yeah, but the key is to fund it properly. Yes, sir.
Can you go into some of the other points you have here on this for the IULs, just so that
So
everybody kind of tracks? Because there's people on here that are not familiar about what this is and what it can do for them.
okay, so the IUL, there are tax advantages to now you get with your tax person to get more in there, but there it's like tax deferred, or I don't want to speak incorrectly, but there are definitely some major tax advantages that you, by funding, and because the IUL is an insurance policy, but you can also, it grows cash. You get tax advantages because it is an insurance policy, and it's looked upon differently than, let's say, what is it you have, like the TSPs or things like that,
Mm-hmm.
but then we'll get into the fixed annuities. But yeah, it has better, some good tax advantages, and the cash value, if funded correctly, again, I want to repeat, if funded correctly, they have very good cash growth potential. And they are also used, a lot of folks use them to supplement retirement income, because like I said, if you fund it correctly, you definitely will be able to have money in the future, using those IULs. And because they're life insurance, they have tax benefits. The government, for some reason, the tax, if it's an insurance product, it gets tax advantages. And again, it's protection for your family twofold, because you have the cash growing aspect, and you also have the death protection, the life insurance. So it's twofold protection for your family. And that is how wealthy people generate wealth through these things. They dump money into an IUL and let it sit, because what the insurance company, they're making money. You're capped on your growth, but it has growth, and they're using that to make money. So you're going to make money if you let it sit there. That's the key. You got to let it sit, and you got to let it fund correctly. But
Okay,
after,
so
yeah,
that's what I was going to ask you. So when you say fund correctly, so let's say I'm putting in there like $500 a month. Is it
yes.
growing interest during that time, which is what's yielding the cash value growth, or what
Now,
is it doing when I'm funding it?
okay, see, that's the thing with the IUL. I will have to show you like the illustrations so that you can really see it, because you have something as your target premium, your MEC premium, and then you have your minimum premium. And see, it depends on if 500 is your target premium, if it's your MEC, or if it's your minimum.
Mm.
Okay, if that's your maximum, and your minimum is say 200, and you throwing 500 in there, yeah, you're definitely going to grow. But it depends on how you set it. And some folks, they will set, if you get an unscrupulous agent, they will set, because you get paid on your target, and they will make the target the higher number, when as your max should be your higher number. You see what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
then you are you in
Yeah, I
it
kind
won't,
of get
it's
it.
gonna,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Okay,
then
so just to translate what I heard you
mhm,
say is that basically this IUL, if I have a specific target that I'm trying to meet, let's say I'm retiring in 4 years and I have a target of 150,000, but really my max should be more like 200,000. I am going to be putting money in there based on my ability to put money in this thing and just let it sit.
yes,
And then
yes,
based on what I'm putting in there, it's going to accumulate a growth over a specific amount of time until I
yes,
reach retirement age, and at which time I'm going to use this money to supplement my income with my Social Security.
yes,
Okay.
absolutely,
Okay, I'm gonna have to get
yes.
some more information about the IULs, because I think that's very interesting that you brought that up. So thank you for that. Okay,
Yeah, but
Bernadette, you have a
definitely.
question. Okay, Bernadette, you're on mute, sweetie.
Sorry,
There you
yeah, sorry. I'm I'm up here hitting the chat button trying to talk.
go.
Um,
Okay.
as a business owner,
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am.
um, we talk about the benefits of making sure we're protected and we covered.
Mhm.
When do you suggest a business owner to get these insurances and protections on a business? Because some of us say we just starting out and
Uh-huh.
you haven't made any money yet. So when is the best time to um, protect yourself in the industry? Is it with the first client, or do you fund it out your personal budget until your business pick up? Or how would you suggest going about getting the proper funding, I mean, the proper protection for the business?
Great question.
Well, oh, that's a good question. When you can afford it. that's the best time to get it. If you're investing out of your personal to put it into your business, you can track that as your business investment. But you don't want to put anything in place that you cannot afford to keep in place. Okay, so definitely when you can afford to put it in place, and it's the sooner the better, especially with life insurance product. When things are tied to life insurance, unfortunately, they have to do based on whoever the policy is on, they'll do a soft, it's like a credit report for your health. They may run an MIB, which is a medical insurance bureau report, and they see stuff in there. So it's best to get it sooner because as we get up there in age, go to the doctor, things change often sometimes, and you realize, so it's best to get it while you're healthy and young. So any young business owners on here, definitely put those any insurances attached to you, put those things in place. Even if you don't have anything personally, find someone, put those things in place while you're young and healthy. But you don't want to wait till you're older and you got those problems, and it makes yeah, it's some folks you can't even get insurance. Like I tried, my sister tried to get she's yeah. So you definitely want to wait. Don't wait.
Yeah,
So
when you're
yeah, don't
young,
wait.
okay, so I would also add that if you're going into business for the first time, the number one thing you need to have is business insurance
Yeah,
because
you definitely want to have that.
you never know who's going to be able to say what. In these days and times, people are suing for any little tiny
Yes.
thing. They don't care what it is. If they feel like they
Yes.
can get something from you, whether it be asset or money or things, um, best believe you want to protect yourself. So make sure you get the proper business insurance. It's the right thing to do, and plus you'll have peace of mind. I would also
Definitely.
say that if you're healthy and able to get life insurance, please do. If you have
Yes.
diabetes like me, even though I'm healthy and not having diabetes, they would not even give me life insurance simply because I have a pre-existing condition. Okay.
Yes.
My family is
Yes.
not protected, which means that I have to put money away in order for my family to take care of me if something happens to me. And that's a sad thing because you can have diabetes and be totally, healthy walking around. Doesn't mean I'm totally 100% disabled, but they look at that as I'm gonna be dying soon, and
Yeah.
they don't want to pay or whatever reason they may find. But if you're young and you're healthy and you don't have these issues, I'm like with Ashley, get yourself a good life insurance to protect yourself, okay? Because you just
Yes.
never know. You just never know,
You never know.
especially if you're going to be running a business that requires you to have a brick and mortar and things like that. You're going to need protection. If you're just doing it at home, I agree with Ashley, is when your money is consistent in your business that you can afford to put certain things in place like health benefits, life, other additional life insurances or insurances that's specific to your business or short term, like short term, long term. If you're making money on a consistent basis and you can do that, then I would say do that. But if you're not, then you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons, But that business insurance, that's you gotta have that. Okay. You gotta have that, especially starting out, right? Once you get seasoned, you can determine whether or not you don't need it or not. But when you're first starting out, I highly recommend you do it.
Yes.
And Anna, just wanted
Definitely.
to add also, if you don't mind, I
Mhm.
am a life insurance agent. I can send some information to you to share with the class on IULs.
Oh, well, we can have a webinar, so let's make that a thing. We'll just do a webinars on wealth building for IULs, so we can
Okay.
do that.
All
Great.
right.
This is excellent. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we got Ken on here, so we're going to speed up a little bit. So
Okay.
yeah, I
So
think we talked
yes,
about this right here.
yeah, we talked about this, and we pretty much this is near the end. You can move on to this. Get you guys a good tax professional. Plan for your retirement. Please definitely do that. Move on to the next.
Okay.
Yeah, you can move on. So this is just your blueprint, people. Remember, separate your finances. All right. Budget, budget, and budget. Make sure you know that. All right. Maintain as quickly as you can some kind of reserves. All right. Get you some good insurances to protect your income. All right, and get some of those tax advantaged assets like the fixed annuities, and definitely again plan for your retirement.
Yeah.
All right, as an entrepreneur, definitely protect and plan. And here's my information if you need any information further, but you already have your IUL specialist on here, but I'm definitely dabble in that as well. So, and trust. I have a young guy, he's phenomenal at creating trust for business owners to help you protect your money. So definitely here's my information. Please reach out if you you want more information on anything that you heard tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. If you need help, trying to get your budget together or whatever, reach out to Ashley, reach out to me, don't let your finances stop you with
No.
running your business, okay? Don't let that be the reason why you can't move forward with anything in life. Even if you come out of this class and a year later you decide you don't want to do a business, each and every one of you should know how to fix your credit. I did the video
Yes.
on that, not to mention I have the YouTube video to follow up. We're talking to you about funding, what you need to do so you don't make those mistakes. You got Ashley here and Sharon talking about how you can build wealth. So everybody should be coming out of here with 750 credit scores and above and have money in the bank.
In the bank.
In the bank.
In the
To
bank.
do whatever you want. You should be able to go to the store and buy whatever you want without worrying about what's in your bank account or what's
Mm-hmm.
not in your bank account or whether you can afford it or not afford it, right?
Yes.
So
And
that
teach our
and
children, teach our
right.
children,
And
teach our
that's
young
right.
people.
That's right. And be able to create whatever you view as financial wealth. It is not always about money. It could be comfortability. It could be
Yep.
peace of mind. It could be knowing that you have things set up in order to take care of yourself every single day. It could be the food you have in your refrigerator, knowing that you don't have to worry about, not having food, okay? Or maybe you have a rhythm and you have a car that you don't have to pay a car note. Whatever that is to you, that's the wealth that you need to build for yourself. And when you do that, you're going to translate those habits over to a I don't know who this is, but you're going to translate those habits over to your business because whatever you build now is going to be really fantastic when you have your business and you're going to be very, very dedicated to do that. So,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Definitely.
Great job. Great
Yes.
job. Thank you so much, Ashley. Thank you for
Thank
coming out here
you. Thank you
tonight
for
and
your
sharing
time.
and all
Thanks for
that.
inviting me. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And I'm going to definitely share your presentation and contacts with everybody. Make sure you note that you got her name, number, email on the screen if you don't have that, and it's being recorded. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then Ken Alozie is here from Greenwood Capital. Ken is my man. He is so knowledgeable. You guys are going to love him. Actually, if you want to hang around and just kind of hear what he's saying, you're welcome to
Yeah,
do so.
absolutely.
So we're going to come back at exactly 7:15 and keep this party going. So yeah, 17 is a good time for us to get something to eat, take a walk around, get some water. And we're going to
Yes.
come back. And Ken, I'm going to make you co-host so you can share your screen.
All right, perfect. Sounds good.
All righty, cool. That was a quick break. I can't believe how quick that went.
Mm.
Okay. So, Ken, whenever you are ready to share your screen and get started, we are excited that you are here.
I'm excited too. Let's get this
That's
up here.
right. So, Ken, we have a bunch of exciting entrepreneurs on here that have really good, tremendous, and diverse backgrounds of industries that's happening right now, from transportation to corporate training to everything, right? So, uh-oh, let me see. Got to double click this. Not sure why the screen hasn't started sharing yet. We're having some issues
Mhm.
with Zoom. Zoom is slow today for some odd reason.
Okay.
So,
Can you guys see my screen?
no, I can't see it yet. Oh, there we go. It finally came up.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
everybody can see that. Let's see. Let me try doing this. Okay. Okay. You can still see it?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, I'll get started. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ken Alozie, Managing Director at Greenwood Capital Advisors, and today we're going to talk all about funding. And I call this presentation "How to Make Your Business Financeable." because a lot of times we talk about, oh, there's issues with regards to access to capital or businesses can't access capital. And I've been in finance 25 years, and there are periods when access to capital is actually um, closed or narrow, like after 2008 and during COVID. But most of the time, the issue isn't that there's not enough capital, it's that businesses and business owners aren't necessarily prepared to receive the capital that's out there. So, in other words, their businesses actually aren't financeable. So, they could apply to 20 banks, 50 banks, they all would turn them down. So, today, what we're going to talk about is how to make your business, how to position it so that you're actually fundable. So, talking about what lenders are looking for, the different types of programs that are out there. Um, and what you can do to position yourself um, to access that. So just some updates in the small business market. Obviously, last year rates came down, and so that directly impacted interest rates for loans. So those are a little bit lower relative to, say, 12 to 24 months ago. There are some changes with SBA lending, some of the rules. So you definitely want to familiarize yourself if you're thinking about getting an SBA loan for your business, how those are going to impact you. Some of the big ones are before businesses only had to be 51% owned by a US citizen or permanent resident. Now that number is 100%. So that's one major change that's impacted a lot of immigrants. The other one is this idea. Has anyone ever heard of this idea of a K-shaped economy? Meaning your view on whether the economy is doing well or not is based on where you are in that K. So if you're in the top part of that K, maybe you have a good job, you're more likely to have assets like stocks, real estates, crypto, which have trended upwards the last 10 to 15 years. If you're in the bottom part of that K, you're more impacted by things like inflation and the job market. And your opinion might be that the economy maybe isn't doing so well. So why is that important? You definitely want to understand how this trend impacts your business because lenders are going to ask those questions. How are they impacted? Who are your customers? How are they impacted by this? And if they are impacted, what are you doing in response to that? And then in general, banks are still lending a lot, but they're dotting a lot of I's and crossing a lot of T's. So you want to make sure that what you're submitting to them is complete and that you are up on what the banks are looking for, their requirements, and making sure you meet them. So we'll talk a little bit more in detail about what that means. So just a little bit about me. I spent a lot of years, my early career at firms like Lehman Brothers and Morgan Stanley, working with large companies, advising them on raising equity, debt, mergers and acquisitions. And then over time, I started working with what we call small businesses and middle market businesses around some of the same things. One of the things I notice is large companies, even if they've raised capital 20 times, 30 times, they always bring in a team to help advise and get it done. Small businesses, largely, they're navigating it on their own. So, one of my big takeaways is definitely form your team. Have your roster of advisors, on the funding side, legal, accounting, insurance. Now, there's all these online tools where you can apply and get a loan. It's You want to be careful about doing that, making sure that you're getting the right type of capital so it doesn't hurt your business down the line. So Greenwood was named after the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, so later known as the Black Wall Street. So one of our big missions really is um, really advising and helping to provide not just the capital, but the knowledge around capital so that particularly entrepreneurs of color and women are better positioned to actually succeed. And on the upper right corner here are some of the descendants and former residents of the original Greenwood district in the 1920s. So just a little bit about Greenwood. Most of the companies that we work with are looking for between about 5 million and 10 million of funding, but we do have a lot of small business programs as well. We do a lot of SBA loans. We do unsecured lines of credit, secured lines of credit, business credit cards, and a lot of other different types of funding. So one thing that's great about us is we can provide solutions as your business grows and grow with your business. So just a few myths about lending that I hear all the time. And the moral of the story is there's no one thing that lenders look at. They're going to look at your total picture. Traditional banks, sometimes they do have hard cutoffs, especially around credit. So with a lot of traditional banks, usually that cutoff is somewhere between 680 and 700. And if you don't meet that, they can't work with you. But most of the time, banks are looking at everything. Um, they're looking at the total picture. So you definitely want to be mindful of the story you're telling when you're talking to a lender. And it starts from that first conversation to the documents that you provide to your financials. All of that you want to make sure you're driving that story and not leaving room for that lender to make assumptions or inferences, especially the kind that are going to hurt you. So we'll talk about what that means later. Some of the ways I see people go wrong is I think some people underestimate how important your FICO score and your credit history is. So you definitely want to be intentional about managing your credit. Know what your score is. And if your score is below that 680, it's not that you can't get funded. There are options out there, but you're not gonna get the best options if you're, at a 600 FICO or a 620. So definitely you want to be on top of your credit, what your score is, get your reports, all three bureaus, find out what's bringing it up, bringing it down. Um, you want to be careful about using personal credit cards to fund your business because it can make it harder for you to get a business loan later. Um, One thing that's really important before you talk to a lender, know what you're actually looking for. So, what's your ideal outcome? So, are you looking for a $50,000 loan, a $500,000 loan? And then what do you plan to do with that? So you want to have that itemized. Hey, I'm looking for 100,000. 10,000 is going to go to this. 5,000 is going to go to new salaries. We plan to hire two people. 5,000 is going to go to equipment, whatever that is. You don't want to just pull a number out of thin air. Banks are going to ask you for a sources and uses table that outlines the amount of capital you need, what you plan to use it for, and then how much of your own capital you're going to inject towards those needs. So if you're looking for 100,000, a bank might say, well, we want to see that you're contributing 10% or 10,000 of that, and then the bank will loan you 90,000. Another thing I see people do is treating the lender as a means to an end and not a partner. You definitely want to be during the loan process, you want to be responsive, you want to be professional, but even after the loan is made, um, it's not like you don't want to look at it as, okay, I got the capital, that's it. You want to be still have that ongoing dialogue with the lender, particularly if your business is running into issues. So if you foresee, oh, we're coming into a slow period, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make those payments, don't just not make them and ignore the lender's emails or phone calls. Get in front of it, be intentional, reach out, ideally beforehand and say, hey, I foresee a slow season coming on, but this is what we're doing to counteract that. Is there a way that I can make modified payments or what have you? If you look at it as a partnership, a lender's more likely to be able to hear you out and see how they can work with you versus you're just seeing it as they're giving me money. Maybe I'll pay it back. Maybe I won't. Um, you definitely want to see it as a relationship. And be careful about the debt you take on, especially early in your business, because it's become harder to refinance debt. I've seen people take on these expensive, they're called merchant cash advances, where the interest rates can be 30%, 40%, 50%, even higher. But they think, well, I just need the money and maybe later I'll refinance it. One of the changes they made to the SBA rules is you can't use it to refinance expensive debt like that. Before you could, but now you can't. So don't take on debt that you don't think your business will be able to pay back according to the terms of the loan. So we've heard of this statistic in some way, shape, or form, which is that most businesses don't make it after 5 years. The reason most cited is that businesses lack access to capital. Um, but the truth is, a lot of businesses aren't financeable, and we'll talk about why. So, the key to making your business more financeable, you can broadly look at it as two topics. One is keeping and creating good records, and the other is really being on top of your credit. And yes, I mean your personal credit because your business credit is something that you're going to build over time. And it matters. It doesn't really matter as much as far as getting a loan until you're in business for a much longer period. So, by records, most people, when they think of records, they think about financial statements like a profit and loss or balance sheet. And that is part of what I mean. If your business is established enough, you've been around a few years to where you have a bookkeeper that's putting together your statements, that's great. Um, some lenders are going to want to see that, especially if you're applying for like an SBA loan or a larger loan. Lenders are going to want to see that. But most people don't think about the other three areas here. Bank statements, for one, especially if you're a smaller business. A lot of lenders are going to ask for your last 3 months or 6 months of bank statements, and they're going to look at the cash coming in versus the cash coming out to try and see if there's enough room in there for your business to support the loan that you want to take on. So one of the things that hurts businesses here with bank statements is one, they run personal expenses using their business bank accounts. And so that understates the income that your business is making. If in addition to business expenses, you also have personal expenses in there. The other is you don't want to let your business bank account get overdrawn because a lot of lenders have rules where if they look back the last 3 months, if you've been overdrawn 3 times, they can't fund you. Some lenders will say one time in the last 3 months, they can't fund you. So when I say be mindful of the records that you're creating as you run your business, that's one of the things that I'm talking about. Another one is tax returns. And similar with tax returns, sometimes businesses do what I call over deduct. They expense a lot of things that maybe they're business expenses, maybe they're not, but they're trying to lower their tax burden. And what ends up happening is now you essentially understate your business profits. And so the amount that that lender can lend you is going to be lower. So you want to be mindful of that as well. And then a personal financial statement is a summary of your personal assets and liabilities. Usually, you only have to fill these out for like an SBA loan or a larger loan. But all these things are important because really what banks are trying to do is assess your business. And these statements are going to enable a bank or an investor or anyone else outside of your company to do that. And we don't have to wait until the end for questions. If you have questions as we go along, feel free to just raise your hand or put them in the chat and we can address it while we're on the slide. I'll pause for now. Any questions at this point? So we'll talk a little bit about credit. So there's a lot of emphasis that lenders place on your credit history because it's for them it's proof that you've been responsible with debt in the past. So they're looking for not just the score, they're also looking for what I call the depth of your credit. So they usually want to see at least two. All right, Lawrence from Tulsa, Oklahoma, like that. We've got they want to see two open revolving accounts. So revolving accounts are loans like a line of credit, credit card, home equity line, things that you use and then you pay down and then you use again. So it's revolving. And I say open because sometimes what happens is people they get out of credit card debt and then they close the card. And that can actually bring your score down when you do that. So, because your utilization goes down. And so you want to make sure even if you don't use the card, unless it's got expensive annual fees or something like that, keep it open because that's going to help your score. And then they want to see at least one or two installment accounts that you're either current on or that you've paid off. Installment accounts are things like mortgage loans, car loans, student loans, and they're going to look at your payment history, how many lates you have, things like that, and they're going to look at how far back your credit goes. So, what's considered good credit? This one often um, people get confused about depending on your perspective. But for the purposes of getting a business loan, really 700 and above is good, is what's considered good credit. Now, if you're below that, all definitely is not lost. Like I said previously, you want to pull your score, use a service like Credit Karma or Identity IQ, something that's not going to generate an inquiry. You also are entitled to a free copy of your credit report every single year, but you want to pull it, see what's bringing it down, see if there are mistakes on there. Sometimes there are mistakes. And if there's something that was resolved years ago that's still on there, reach out to that company and see if you can get it removed from your credit. But you definitely want to be on top of that. So I'll pause here before we go into some of the funding options. Do we have any questions?
I think you hit on some new stuff there too, Ken, about the changes that is happening with funding. And I just kind of want to stress, guys, I know you guys are writing a lot of notes and you're thinking, but as we talked about funding or even just credit or budget for the last 3 weeks, you really need to understand what your position is. I do agree with Ken is that you do not want to go into a financial situation that you just can't pay back, right? So, Ken, for that part right there, what have you noticed or witnessed as far as penalties, other than the fact they're going to go on your credit, that someone will get in trouble not paying it back? What is like almost the worst case scenario that you've seen?
Yeah. So if you default on, let's say, uh, anything that's federal, like an SBA loan, that can preclude you from getting an SBA loan ever again. And it can also make it hard for you to get any serious loan for 7+ years. So instead of outright defaulting, if you're running into trouble, again, you definitely want to reach out to the lender. If the payments are 1,000 a month and you can pay 500, try to work out something where you can pay 500. Now, technically, that's what we call a technical default because you're not paying as agreed, but it's not going to do as much damage to your credit as just ignoring it and just not outright not paying.
Okay, cool. Any federal penalties, any prison time? Well, because it's federal now.
Uh,
So got
only if it's fraud,
if it's fraud.
typically. So if you intentionally provide misleading or doctored information, and I've seen people try and do this where it doesn't happen often, but I have seen people submit fake bank statements, trying to run a scam. Now it's so easy
Oh.
to pick up on.
Mhm.
Most of us have seen enough documents to where we can look at it and tell it's fake. But now with technology, it's even easier if you don't have an eye for it. But usually jail time is more like if it's fraud, and they've really been cracking down the last 10 years on especially SBA fraud, PPP
Mm,
loan fraud.
mm,
They've been cracking down a lot on that. But
okay.
typically, it's not going to be anything criminal if you
Mhm,
just are in a situation where you can't pay and your business can't pay anymore, you file
mhm,
for bankruptcy. But it
mhm,
will make it really difficult for you to get a loan for a long
mhm.
time.
Okay, so let's look at the opposite effect. If somebody's getting credit for the first time, what is sort of like a realistic situation that they will go from like a $5,000 credit card to something like a $50,000 credit card? What's your experience on that? Just to kind of bring context to those who may be in a situation to get a small, credit card or a small loan, you know, what would be like their positive impact?
So I always tell people if you're not in a situation where you need capital right away for your business, that's good. So the first thing you want to do is just walk into your current bank and bring your LLC papers and all that and get a business credit card. So a credit card under your business, see what you qualify for. Because one, that'll be a source of revolving credit for your business when you need it. But two, that's a great way to start building business credit. So if you use that credit card responsibly, I started a business before Greenwood. I started a business in 2008, and that was one of the first things I did. Is I walked in, I started a internet company, and I got a business credit card. And for me, that was fine. It enabled me to, it was just another source of funding for things like marketing and materials and press releases and things like that. I ended up selling that company in 2011. But it's another way to establish history. If you make those payments on time, that can lead to limit increases on that card over time. It also helps you build a relationship with a financial institution so that let's say you get approved for a $10,000 business credit card. If you come back in 2 years and say, hey, when I came to you, my business was a startup. Now we're doing 250,000 in revenue, and now I'm looking for more like 100,000. Now they already know you. You're in the system. You have not only credit history, but you have credit history with them, and it makes subsequent loans a lot easier. So you definitely want to start somewhere. Don't wait until you really, really need credit to start doing it. Do it in stages. So a business credit card is a great place to start. We actually have a business credit card program that's tech enabled. Approvals are up to as high as 250,000. So for most businesses, that's plenty to do a lot of the things they want to do. And startups can qualify for that as long as you have strong credit. So that's one funding option that I think a lot of businesses overlook is business credit cards.
That sounds good. Thank you so much, Ken, for clarifying that. That is really good to know.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
So,
Nobody? Okay. All right, keep going.
so just generally speaking, this is what most banks look at. Um, and sometimes you'll hear this represented as the five C's or whatever, but three C's I think is easiest for most people to remember, and this really sums it up: is credit, collateral, and cash flow. Now, for traditional banks, you have to have all three of these in order for them to fund you. And collateral is an asset that's backing the loan. So it could be a physical asset like real estate or equipment, or it could be a paper asset like accounts receivable. Now, for alternative lenders, like for us, you don't necessarily have to have all three. If you do, great, we can get you a great loan. But if you have maybe one or two of these, we can possibly still fund you if those one or two are strong, whereas a traditional bank will not. And I'm actually on the board of a traditional bank as well. I'm on the board of a bank called Commonwealth National Bank. It's a black-owned bank, one of the few black-owned banks left, based in Alabama. And so we turned down probably, I don't know, 90% or so of the loans that come in because our standards are much more stringent as a traditional bank. The collateral definitely needs to be there. With an alternative lender like Greenwood, we can probably work with you if you've got one or two of these. So I'll stop there. Toya, do you have a question?
Yes, please. Thank you for taking my question.
Sure.
You talked about collateral. Say you have a home, but the home is not registered under the business. If it's personal collateral, how does that work with a business loan?
Yeah, that's fine. It doesn't have to be held by the business. So for loans like an SBA loan, this is a perfect example where in order for you to be approved, usually they'll take a lien on the business assets, but then they'll often ask for personal collateral like real estate. So if you own a home with a certain amount of equity, that will actually be collateral for the SBA loan. But outside of that, for let's say asset-based lending, like we're going to talk about later, usually those assets are going to be held by the business. There are some types of programs where you can get funding that's linked to the equity in your in any real estate, including the one your primary residence. So there's different ways the collateral may work, but for traditional loans and SBA loans, usually your personal assets like your home will be collateral for the loan, especially if it's a large one.
Okay, and Ken, so I have a follow-on question based on what you just said about the equity in your home. If you have the equity in your home, why not just use the equity in your home versus get a loan?
You mean like take a home equity loan?
Right.
You can do that. Now you end up with a similar problem I referred to earlier. So whenever you have a personal loan for your business, even if you stay current on it, that'll impact your credit score because your debt load goes up, your
Okay.
utilization, which is the amount you've drawn on any credit versus your credit limit goes up. And so that impacts your credit score, and that makes it more difficult to get a business loan later. But if that's your only option, or that's the option that you see as the best option, people will do that as well. Ideally, you want a business loan though.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. There's a question here in the chat.
So Caesar
Let me
was
see.
asking, does your business credit, would it build your business credit if you borrow against your home, right? So it would only matter if it's a business loan
If
because,
it's a business loan,
yeah, because
yeah.
Dun& and Bradstreet, they actually ma- uh-oh, Nika, there you go. Yeah, so if you if you borrow just a HELOC, like me, I have a HELOC, right? So that's going to be on my personal credit because I own the house. The house is not under a business. And so therefore it, like Ken said, it raises my debt utilization. I have to make sure I make my payments on time. And so any payments that I make is going to go right to my personal credit report. But if I had went to Ken and said, "Hey Ken, I need X thousands of dollars," he probably would have put it under my business, and therefore he would have used my Dun and Bradstreet number, would have been reported over there, or however they would have reported to them to build my business credit. They
Now, there
wouldn't.
are some
Yeah.
business loan programs that, if you have equity in your home, um, the size of the loan can be linked to that. So we have one or two programs like that, and there's some other banks out there that'll give you a business loan based on the size of your home equity, the equity in your primary residence. So in those cases, it would help your business credit because it's a business loan. But a regular home equity loan or home equity line of credit would not build business credit.
Yeah, 100%. Great question.
So, oh, absolutely, Caesar.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions, Bernadette?
Yep, I heard that.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Do you think should we get business credit or to make our business look great or stand out or what have you? Because I noticed at Bank of America, soon as you open an account, a business account with them, they want you to get business credit. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but I was wondering, is that a smart and strategic move to get business credit immediately? And is it really necessary? And like, how does it actually benefit the business?
So there's two good questions. So there's two scenarios. One is you actually do need the funding for your business. So in that case, then whether it's a line of credit or a term loan, you should definitely consider it. The other scenario is maybe you don't need it right now, but you might need it down the line. So in that scenario, you want, I would only take on a revolving source a type of credit so that you only pay interest or payments if you draw on it. Makes sense? So that can be a business credit card, it can be a business line of credit, but something that's revolving is not a bad idea to get before you need it, as long as there's no fees or big fees or anything like that. Some banks, because some banks don't like to do lines of credit, and if they do it, because it's a bunch of work up front and cost, and then you may or may not draw on it. So some banks will say, well, we'll approve you, but then you have to draw, your initial draw has to be at least whatever amount so that they're at least making some of that cost back. So if it's something that, okay, I'll use it for something that I would have paid for anyway, like marketing or materials or something like that, it's fine. But if you don't need it, the short answer is see if you can get a revolving source of credit.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So, so in addition to credit, collateral, cash flow, there's some other things that people tend to not think about. Now, the bank, depending on the type of loan, they will look at, like for an SBA loan, for example, they will look at your personal balance sheet. So what assets you have versus your liabilities. And for some types of loans, like SBA loans, you have to have a positive net worth, and you have to have a net worth that's commensurate with the size of the loan that you're looking for. So in other words, if you have a $10,000 net worth, it'll be hard to get a business loan for $2 million, for example. Um, Now, prior bankruptcies, things like that, if they're closed out, may not necessarily disqualify you from getting a loan as long as I actually funded a business that filed for bankruptcy years ago. This is back in 2008, 9, and we were able to fund them for about $2 million. So we got that done. You definitely, if you have anything in the past or current, you definitely want to disclose that up front because one, you don't want to waste your time. You don't want to go through all this paperwork just to find out that they could never fund you anyway. But also, you don't want the lender to discover this stuff because then if instead of you telling them, if they find it, then now that hits your credibility. It looks like even if it's not true, it looks like maybe you tried to hide it. So you definitely want to be upfront with that. I've had clients that were upfront and said, "Hey, can you fund me?" Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is yes. And if we had discovered it later, the answer might have been no. And actually, one client that happened, we would have been able to fund them, but they weren't upfront about something in their credit history. So unfortunately, they were declined. Another one that people overlook is social media. So I've seen people in a tough spot plead their case to a banker and say, "Hey, we're being responsible. We really need this loan for our business. And then the banker does a social media scan, and they find out that they just bought a brand new car, after talking to them, or things like that. So you definitely, share that with your friends, make your page private so that anybody can't find stuff like that, pictures of you upside down on a keg drinking beer. You don't want a lender to find that kind of stuff. So watch your social media. Oh, the other one is industry experience, particularly if it's a startup. You definitely, ideally, you have experience running that type of business, but if you don't, you definitely want to leverage any transferable experience you have. I have one client, he came to me with just a business plan 2 years ago. No, more like 4 years ago. Today, we've helped him fund 2 locations for his restaurant. Given him, we've provided about 2 million for him over that time period. But this guy had a lot of experience. He was a chef for 20 years. He was on Beat Bobby Flay and won, and he's a real deal. So you definitely want to highlight any industry experience that you have. So we'll start with some of the different types of loans that you want to be aware of. So the first is conventional. So when you think about a bank loan, this is usually what you're thinking about. So if you can get this, this is usually going to be the lowest cost and the best terms. So this is a traditional business loan. It's not SBA. It's the interest rate is probably going to be even lower than an SBA loan, but you do have to have those three C's: credit, collateral, cash flow. You're going to have to sign a personal guarantee. They're usually not as flexible as an SBA loan. So an SBA loan you can use for a variety of uses. Usually a conventional loan you can only use for one thing, like you can only use it for equipment or real estate, where a working capital loan from the SBA you can usually use for multiple things. So this one is typically the hardest to get. And so I'd say 85, 90% of businesses that apply for this are turned down. So that's why there are alternative funding options. And so the first one that you should all be familiar with is the SBA. So SBA stands for Small Business Administration, with the exception of with PPP loans and a couple other loans. The SBA doesn't directly make loans. What they do is they make rules, and then banks and lenders follow those rules, and they provide SBA loans. So to get an SBA loan, you go to an SBA lender. So typically you do have to have those three C's as well, but they're more flexible. Take collateral, for instance. SBA loans don't have to be fully collateralized the way a conventional loan has to be. So there's what they call an airball. Let's say you're looking for a $1 million loan, but you only have 200,000 in collateral. Maybe that's your house or something like that. You may still be approved if you have strong credit and your business is generating enough cash flow to pay that loan back. And so what happens is they're government guaranteed, so that worst case scenario, if you default, then the government comes in and they recoup the balance of that loan to that lender up to a certain percentage. So that enables the lender to make loans that maybe they otherwise wouldn't be able to make. Unlike a conventional loan, that's usually 3 to 5 years, the term on SBA loans are much longer, either 10 years or if there's real estate involved, 25 years. And so that stretched out time horizon lowers the payments and enables more businesses to qualify. So a little bit more on SBA loans. The two primary programs are the 7A program and the 504 program. Most of you are going to apply, if you apply for an SBA loan, it's going to be for the 7A program. That can be used for a variety of uses. The loan size is up to 5 million. You can use it for working capital, to buy inventory or equipment, even to buy real estate. You can use it to buy another business. So it's very, very flexible. Express loans, they keep changing the rules on this. It used to be for loans under 350, and then it was 500. They might have dropped it back down to 350 again. But basically, if you're under that, then you can do the express loan program, which has fewer documents required and the timeline is shorter. The 504 loan program tends to be used more for larger loans and more for real estate development projects. Again, the importance of having good records for the SBA loan, that there's going to be quite an extensive list of documentation required: tax returns, financials, your business debt schedule, your personal financial statement, tax returns, and they're going to want to see. Typically, the SBA wants to see that you're putting in 10% towards your business's financial needs. So if you need 100,000, they want to see that you're putting in 10,000. So they're going to want to see the source of that. Is that coming from savings? Is that coming from a gift? So that's going to show up when you fill out that personal financial statement that lists all your assets and your liabilities. So that's it for SBA loans for now. That's probably going to be, that's the one you should, I would say, out of all these, you want to be most familiar with. Now, below the express loan program, there are micro loans. Um, so if you're looking for a loan below 50,000, there is a micro loan program. The documentation is going to be a little bit less. And a lot of banks aren't going to offer that. A lot of banks don't even like to offer express loans, loans below a certain amount. So for microloans, you want to go to what's called a CDC, or a Community Development Corporation. If you just Google it, there's a number of them probably in your neighborhood. Those operate a little bit more like not-for-profits, meaning that they're not solely driven to make a profit. They're there to serve the communities that they're in and to make sure that those businesses have access to the resources they need. So that could be capital, that could be information, tools, grants. So you definitely want to get plugged in to your local CDC as well. Any questions on SBA funding before we move into asset-based financing? So really quickly, an asset-based loan is going to be tied to a specific asset. So let's say so are there any government contractors in here? Okay, so one type of funding, so one big issue with a lot of government contractors is you get a contract, you win a contract, you do all this work, you invoice, then you have to wait 30, 60 days to be paid. Meanwhile, you have another contract that maybe you've won or you want to get or you need to start. And so you need the capital to start that contract. So with an accounts receivable loan, what you can do is you can get a loan tied to the business that you've already done and invoiced for. So you can get usually up to 85, 90% of those eligible accounts receivables in the form of either loan or line of credit. Then you can use that loan to do the new project. And then there are other loans that are tied to assets as well. I'd say it's more common to see a loan tied to accounts receivables and real estate than a loan solely tied to inventory and equipment, although they're out there. But usually an asset-based loan is going to be tied to mainly your accounts receivables. But if you've got inventory and equipment, those can contribute to the size of the loan that you're approved for. Um, Now, there is a specialized form of financing called contract finance, which is you've won the contract, you haven't done the work yet, but you need financing to do that contract. That's a little bit harder to get. You have to be more of an established business, be around at least 3 years, have good financials. Usually, those types of lenders want to see, they'll only work with loans, say 500,000 above or a million and above, but just want to let you know that type of financing's out there because most people aren't aware of that. Business credit card financing, we talked about earlier. It's a great way. It's probably the easiest way to start building business credit. And it's also a great way to have some source of revolving credit for your business. Often overlooked. Startups can usually qualify for that because there usually aren't revenue requirements. And then some other types here you want to be aware of. We talked about merchant cash advances earlier, which you generally want to stay away from unless you absolutely need them. They can be really, really expensive. You usually have to pay them back either daily or weekly. There's revenue-based finance, where your loan payments are tied to a percentage of your revenue. So if your revenue goes down in a given month, the payment you make on that loan goes down. If your revenue goes up, your payment goes up. So it's more flexible especially if you have a business that's seasonal or that has uneven revenue, but the cost of capital is going to be a little bit higher for those. We talked about contract finance. There's purchase order finance as well. If you need a loan to say buy equipment or materials to fulfill a contract. Fix and flips for real estate. Most conventional banks don't do that. You're usually going to go to alternative lenders. That's one that we do as well. We support a lot of real estate investors. And factoring is a form of accounts receivable finance that's a little bit more restrictive. So all lenders are not created equal, just even within the same vertical. So even if you go to two SBA lenders, they may have the SBA has requirements, and then a lot of lenders have their own requirements on top of that. So I've had people come to me and say, well, I was declined because the lender said, well, they thought the lender said, oh, the SBA doesn't approve this. And no, that's not true. That lender just doesn't approve those types of loans. So you want to find out one, why, if your lender says, if you apply for a loan and they say no, one, what was the reason? Because sometimes the reason is the things we're talking about, credit, etc. Sometimes it's things specific to that lender. We get referrals from traditional banks all the time. One of them referred somebody to us with an 800 FICO. They were buying a business, so it's not like they were even starting one from scratch. It was already successful. Guy had good liquidity. So why'd they turn him down? A year ago they would have done it, but they're no longer funding that particular franchise. So they declined it. So it can be random reasons like that. It can be, oh, we already have too many businesses in this industry, so we're not going to approve anymore because banks are thinking about risk management as well. They don't want 80% of one industry in their loan portfolio, for example. So definitely get feedback. Don't take it personally, but get feedback so you can take that into the next conversation with the next lender. Some best practices, any paperwork you get, fill it out completely. Don't leave. I've had people, get a one-page application, half of it's incomplete. That doesn't look good for you because remember, the lenders also, they're not just evaluating your business, they're evaluating you as an operator. You got to think of yourself as a CEO. Everything I say, everything I write is going to reflect on me and my business. So take that into consideration when you're talking to a lender, when you're sending paperwork, all of that. Do your homework with regards to the type of loan you're applying for. So if you're looking for an SBA loan, be up on some of the rules, and you don't have to be an expert, but just generally know what some of the rules are. Um, and then a big one is knowing your numbers. So high level numbers, you shouldn't even have to look up. If a lender asks you how much revenue did you do last year, or about how much revenue you guys do in a month, um, what's your FICO, things like that. You should just know stuff like that. You shouldn't have to ask your accountant or look them up. So just next steps. As a business person, I'd say the important thing here is continuing to build that ecosystem of support. Don't feel like you have to go it all on your own. Um, tap people like Anne, myself. There was a woman on earlier talking about insurance. Have a good accountant or CPA. Have a good marketing person, PR person, maybe a coach, an attorney. You don't have to have them on your payroll. You just want to have people that you can call and do a quick meeting with if you have questions. And again, I know I've said it before because this is a roadblock for a lot of people, but stay on top of your credit. And if we didn't get to all your questions today, or if you think of something later, feel free to just shoot me an email. Email is usually best because I'm usually in meetings during the day. So um, if you do call and I'm unavailable, then my assistant will take a message. But I do get back to emails right away. So definitely take down my info here. So before we close, any last questions? Anything I can help with?
Yeah, when you say credit, are you guys looking at all the credit agencies, or is there a particular one that you look for on the business side?
So that's a good question. So I would say you want to be on top of all three of your credit profiles. Most of the time, I'd say Experian. There's more emphasis on that one in particular, but you definitely want to be on top of all three because sometimes us or another lender, they'll have their own score that's a function of all of your credit data that's out there. So they may create a score that's linked to all three profiles. So you definitely want to be on top of all three. But I'd say Experian probably gets used the most.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Novella,
Hi, good evening.
good evening.
How, or do you have any thoughts about approaching credit unions, like for instance, like Navy Federal for veterans who want to start businesses? In general, are they more, well, what are your thoughts about credit unions?
Like any other institution, they can be great. They can provide more of a personal experience depending on the institution. So, like with every other institution, I would say meet with them. Sometimes it can be person specific. So depending on who you meet with and who you click with at that particular institution. So one of the things I would ask, particularly to something that caters to a demographic like veterans, is what do you guys do differently, or what about your service offering is different from, say, a traditional bank, and see what they say. But they can be great. It just, like with everything else, it just depends on the institution and depends on, whether or not it meets the needs that you have. Because they could be great, but if they don't fund your particular type of business, then it doesn't matter.
Got you. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, I
Any other
agree.
questions?
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree, Ken. You definitely have to do your homework with some of the banks. Like I think somebody mentioned Bank of America. I know that they are heavy on just trying to get funding from all different sources. So whatever bank you choose, just do your homework, find out what they believe in, check out their community, ask questions. And if you are getting somebody on the phone that just cannot answer your questions, just walk inside of a bank and talk to someone face to face. You know what I mean? And let them know exactly what it is that you're trying to do. Just be very upfront and say, I'm trying to establish business credit. This is the reason. If I find that if you just be, transparent and straightforward, they will more than likely find somebody in that office that will not only answer your question, but probably help you get to your goal if they see that you're being upfront what you're trying to do. Don't go in there and try to only tell them pieces of what you're trying to do, because all that'll do is just make you look like you're hiding something, right? Or they're not going to be forthcoming. So if you're really trying to establish that relationship, I'm like Ken, just walk into your bank and say, listen, my credit is not great, but this is what I'm trying to do. How can I work with you to help my situation? Start off with yourself, right? And then as you build up your credit and you get more, consistent about what you're doing, then like Ken said, go to your bank and say, hey, I'm ready for the next level. How can I get a business credit card? For me specifically, I would say, and this is even for my own practice, if your business doesn't require funding to operate and you necessarily don't need funding, it's also not a bad idea to not have it because unless you're really going to be doing stuff that's like equipment heavy, like for the business that Mike wants, yeah, he's going to need funding, right? He's definitely going to need funding. He's going to need to have equipment.
Mhm.
He's going to have to buy parts every time he takes something apart. Me, I don't necessarily need funding, but it'd be good to have if I wanted to have like a conference or if I want to do something outside the scope and I don't want to use all my operating funds. I just want to use credit. So I'm gonna call Ken and say, Ken, I need $10,000. You know, because I really want to do this event. Because if I and here's the thing, if you're gonna get money that you're gonna have to struggle to pay back, you better make it worth your while to get the money and have it to use for something that's going to yield you revenue. For example, if I'm going to go to Ken, this is just me. If I'm going to go to Ken and say, Ken, I need $10,000 to do a business conference, I better make sure that number one, that I can yield some customers for that. Number two, I need to back that up with some sponsors so I can like keep some of that operating capital. You know what I mean? Like make it worth like your while if you're gonna go through all the paperwork and sign away all these things, knowing how it is with loans, they think about what he just told y'all guys. He talking about putting a lien on your house or your equity of your home. Okay, this is some place that you're paying mortgage that you live in. If you don't pay that loan, guess what happens to your house? Okay, so it may seem simple, but getting a loan is serious business. We're talking about you putting your signature on a document that you have a promise to pay, and it will follow you everywhere you go if you default. So if you don't need it, and you don't need it for your business, I'm like, Ken, get yourself a small credit card and use it very sparingly, if you want to do that, but get it when it makes sense to your business.
And
That's the
oh,
key.
sorry.
Yeah, no,
And
go
really
right ahead, Ken.
quickly,
Yeah.
and then Lawanda, I'll get to you. Somebody talked about how you go into some of these big banks and then they offered all this stuff. So one of the differences between, say, a credit union and like a big national or global bank is the bigger banks are going to want to try and cross sell as much as possible. So you're going to come in for a business loan, then they're going to try to get you into a business bank account. Then they might say, well, we want you to talk to a wealth manager, see if we can manage your portfolio. Then maybe we can get you a home equity loan. Then, all this stuff. Now, that's not necessarily in and of itself necessarily bad, but you always want to ask the question of, A, do I need this, what they're offering? And B, is this the best place for me to do that service, that particular service that they're offering? So always keep that in mind. Lawanda?
Hi, Ken. Thank you so much for your
Hi.
presentation. I had two questions. One is, where do you find your business credit score? Is that such a thing? And can you check?
Yeah. You can. So just like for your personal credit, they have these different bureaus like Experian and Equifax. There are bureaus like Paydex and I think a couple of other ones that do calculate scores for your business credit. So
Okay.
if you Google Dun and Bradstreet, someone and put Dun and Bradstreet and Paydex, if
Yes.
you Google business credit, um, you can find that and you can
Okay.
and they actually produce a score as well. So for some types of business loans, they do want to see a minimum score. So it is good to see what your business credit looks like. It's generally not as important as your FICO, at
Mm-hmm.
least in the early years of your business, but it is important to be cognizant of that. And so, ways you can build that, like I said earlier, business credit card, that's an
Mm-hmm.
easy way to start building that. But they also look at other things like do you have a website and all the characteristics of your actual business, filing tax records, if you have suppliers that extend credit, and you make those payments on time, vendors, all those things are going to help contribute to your business credit.
Got you. Thank you. And then my second question was, I know we talked about the traditional business credit, But are VCs still a thing? Angel investors, do they still exist
They
in the world?
they do. So those are other types of funding. So VC stands for venture capital. So those are typically investors that they don't lend you capital. They basically buy a piece of your company. So kind of like a good analogy is if you've ever watched Shark Tank, they'll give you money for X percentage of your business. Now, the caveat is a lot of those entities they'll invest in fast growing businesses. So what they call scalable. So they want a business that can go from, 500,000 revenue to 100 million revenue in 5 years. Or so today, those are going to be businesses that are tech enabled or AI enabled or et cetera. Not necessarily, but if you're scalable, a VC might want to talk to you. Angel investors typically are the stage before VCs. So before maybe you're generating revenue, maybe even before you have a product, maybe you have a prototype or a plan. An angel investor is someone who's more patient capital. They're not necessarily looking to earn a return right away. They believe in you. They'll give you 50,000, pay me back when you pay me back, but get your idea off the ground. You can one way, if you think those types of capital are appropriate for your business, getting back to networking, they have local roundtables where you can meet people like that. Wherever you went to college, definitely reach out to alums. You can probably find at least a few that work at a VC or that are angels, or you might have events where you can meet people like that or conferences. Another source of funding is grants. They are out there. Now, they do take longer to get, so it's tough to rely on grants as your primary source of funding. But there's sites like grants.org and GrantSpace, sites where you can search for grants. Facebook had a grant for um, diverse owned businesses. FedEx has one or had one at least. I don't know if it's still around, but there are others out there. You don't, as long as you meet the requirements, you should apply. So they may have requirements on who owns the business, the type of owner, the industry, how long you've been in business. You don't have to be, some people think, oh, you have to be struggling to get a grant. You don't. All you have to do is meet whatever the requirements are. We've gotten grants before in the past because it's free money and they were offering it. So there definitely are out there, so you want to research grants as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Now, another one linked to VCs is private equity. So they invest in later stage businesses. So if you think you're going to grow your business to a point and then sell it down the line, in these early stages, it's not a bad idea if you're at an event and you meet people in private equity to start building that network because down the line in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, those are the people you're going to reach out to and say, "Hey, I'm retiring, thinking of putting my business up for sale or bringing in a partner to grow it to that next level." What usually happens is a private equity firm might buy, let's say 80% of your business, you keep 20%, and then grow your business even more, and then you sell the remaining 20% up here. So you get what's called two bites of the apple. So there are all these things out there that are beneficial to you. You definitely want to educate yourself on.
So, Ken, so Mike over here is asking a question. So his first question is, uh, I guess this is probably a broad question too. What loans do you consider is backed by the bank? We always hear the FDIC and all that kind of stuff. What loans do you know specifically between SBA and other funding that you are well aware of that is backed by the federal government or not backed by the federal government? I think that's what his question that I'm trying to translate, if that makes.
So yeah, so government guaranteed loans. So SBA is probably the most common. There's also USDA. So a lot of people think you have to be a farming or agricultural focused business to qualify for that. Not necessarily. Your business just has to be located within a certain zone. So if you go to their website, whatever it is, USDA.gov, you can put in the address of your business and see if you're located in a USDA zone to see if you'd qualify for that type of funding. And then there there are some government-backed real estate loans as well. Um, but that's really most of it. The most common are going to be SBA and then USDA.
Okay. And Michael, the other question?
The other question is, as
Mhm.
far as a limit, um, what well, it's actually two questions, but what loan, no matter what loan you go to, what is the limit of that loan? Let's say if I decide to open up a company and I need the maximum amount of money, and I
Mhm.
understand that I might have some sort of collateral or something like that, but I go for a loan, I qualify for this loan, but this loan won't give me no more than
Mhm.
allowed. How would you like if I'm making sense? Like,
Yeah.
Let him answer that one first.
Yeah. So there are different ways to think about that. So for a program like the SBA, the program has certain limits. So for that particular type of loan, the max is $5 million dollars for a 7A loan. And then for 504, it can get much higher, 10 or 20 million. But for most companies in here tonight, they're going to be looking at the 7A loan. So that's going to be capped at 5 million. But that's the cap. So how much the lender decides to approve you for is going to be linked to the revenue and the cash flow of your business, your collateral, all of that. So some lenders have certain underwriting rules. So they might say, we'll lend up to, let's say, 4 times your cash flow of your business. So if your business is generating 250,000 in profit or in cash flow, they might lend 4 times that, a million. So even though the SBA is capped at 5 million, they may not lend you 5 million in that instance. They may lend you 1 million or less than that. Um, Aside from that, most of what the limits are going to be outside of those programs are going to be driven by the bank's standards. So each bank is going to have their own standards. They're going to have their own limits. For real estate loans, this is our cap. For unsecured lines of credit, this is our cap, etc. So that's another thing when you're talking to a lender that you want to ask them.
Nice. Okay,
and
thank
the
you.
last question is my last one.
He got a last question.
Okay. So, depending on the industry that you're in, the category, I'm gonna use an example. If I want to decide to open up a hair salon,
Hmm.
but then again, I have an auto shop,
Hmm.
I decide to open up a hair salon, can I get a loan in a category where the auto shop is? Or the category, like if you don't fit a category, you're not even eligible to make it. Is there,
So
that's how that works?
So some of that is going to be dependent on the program and on the bank or the lender. So for SBA loans, for example, certain types of industries are excluded. So you can't get an SBA loan if you're a church or if you're doing an investment related business, if you're doing, real estate investing or stock investing. For your typical Main Street business, you're probably not excluded for an SBA loan. Now, outside of that, again, it's going to be lender specific. So some banks will have industries that they don't like to lend to, so they may not lend to gas stations, and then another bank down the street that looks the same will lend to gas stations. Or some banks don't lend to dry cleaners, some do. So some of this is going to be lender specific. So again, like remember when earlier when I said when you're in front of a lender, you want to find out if they're lending to businesses like you. That's where that comes in. And again, sometimes banks will lend to a certain industry, but now they're at the point where they're at their cap. We've lent to enough churches or gas stations or retail stores. We're not going to lend to those anymore, at least for a while, till some of those loans roll off. So a lot of it is going to be lender specific.
Road, have you ever came across anything where you read a business plan and it seemed like it was one category, and as you went through it, and then like, wow, this is going to end up being something else?
No, that plan is written really badly if that happens. I probably read over 1,000 business plans. If we don't know what it is a couple pages in, then by the time we read the executive summary, then it's probably not a well-written plan.
You know what? I'm gonna ask this last question, Ken. This is gonna be my last question. That's what he said.
Good.
What is the ratio of loans that were declined based on not having a proper business plan, in your opinion?
Oh, you know,
If you had to put a percentage on it.
again, it's a total picture. So it's kind of like, remember when you were applying to college and you had people that were like, man, my SATs weren't that high, but they played sports or they were in a lot of clubs and they got great grades, so they still got into college. That's kind of how this is. So if, let's say it's not a great business plan, but that person has stellar credit, it's obviously a good business, they might still get funded. Um, so usually when the plan isn't written well, it's usually reflects everywhere else, to be honest. So usually if somebody has a poorly written business plan, they probably their credit might not be great. It's probably the business may not be that established yet. It usually bleeds into other areas. So to answer your question, how many businesses do I see decline just off the strength of the plan? Not that many, but usually they're declined because the plan is bad and all these other things are bad too. That
Bad
makes
with it.
sense.
So in other words, you got to have the whole kit and caboodle. You can't come in there with just half the stuff. So that's a great question.
It's a whole package. It's a
Yes,
whole
the whole
package.
package. All right, guys. So this was very interesting. I tell you, Ken, you can go all day talking about this stuff. I'm telling you, and the more you talk, the more interesting it gets. So,
I appreciate that.
yeah, I mean, it really does. And Mike has some really great questions because he asked some stuff I wasn't even thinking about.
And I like to do these because, a lot of this isn't intuitive. So I definitely I'm all about sharing that information because I would rather have you go into it at least with knowledge than figuring things out and making big mistakes. And then now you've got to spend years fixing this stuff. I've seen businesses doing 1 million in revenue that can't even get a loan for 50,000 because they made a ton of mistakes along the way. So
Right, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much, Ken. Stellar,
absolutely. You're
stellar
welcome, Novella.
presentation as always, stellar.
Thank
Oh
you.
my goodness, guys, this was a lot of information. And so I know we only have like 20 minutes left for tonight, but what I wanted to do was, even though you guys will not be turning in any assignments, I still wanted to go over section 4 so you can start thinking about these things. And it definitely impacts your price points and your ability to, do your business. So if you want to hang in this last 20 minutes, I will go over this real quickly and then we will call it a night. Hopefully you took lots of notes and everything like that. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen so that we can just get through this part. So last week, you guys talked about your demographics, the potential location on where you want to operate your business, whether you're getting a brick and mortar place or you're going to work remotely and do online. However, the other part of your task in this, which you will pick up next week, right, is you need to understand the entire industry, not just what you do specifically. Okay. So, and the rest of section 4 is really designed for you to see the entire picture. So, this so far in the last 4 weeks, 5 weeks, you've been focused on your business, trying to understand your products and services, trying to understand how you're going to position yourself to sell the product or sell the service to make X amount of dollars. And you're trying to figure out what resources you need, what technologies that you're going to use, and the whole thing, right? So before you can actually build a strategy, you have to understand exactly what the entire industry is made of, which means if I'm doing business development, I got to look at the entire business development community. I got to actually find out who is really dominating this area other than maybe your immediate competition. It might even be your immediate competition, but it could also be your mom and pops. It could be somebody down the street. It could be, an organization. It could be somebody or some organization that you never even thought about that's just out there killing it right now, just killing it. And you don't even know because you only scratch the surface with section 3.1. So this section is about everybody else, not you. Okay. So, number one, industry participant. Who is out there dominating this market, whether it be locally or globally? Are they dominated because they have more purchasing power, more supply power? Do they have the staff? Do they have the it factor with their service? Who are these people? They can be located anywhere in the world, right? It could be two or three of them. So maybe try to identify who is out there just really dominating right now in the industry you're doing. So if you're doing consulting, you're doing laundromat, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is you're doing, who are they? How are they able to use their distribution pattern, which is their niche, their pattern of reaching the customers on a global scale or a massive scale? So now you're looking at everybody. Are they all going to Facebook? Are they all, investing $30,000 in a 30-second commercial? Are they all like going to this specific event that happens at a specific time of the year and they all like go to this conference and rub elbows and exchange information where they actually meet and talk to people because you didn't know that's how they were getting customers. And the reason why you want to know that is so that you can understand the different levels of effort that it takes to grab a customer. You will be surprised how many different ways people are going out there and grabbing customers, right? For example, and I always use Mike as an example because people will go to this is sick. They will actually pay some lady to dress up in a nice suit, come down there with all the equipment, don't know how to work the diesel equipment and all that, but because they look good in a nice little skirts like they just got off the plane, to talk to these guys who are in there doing mechanics, and their whole entire job is to go in there and sell the product. That's it. That's their job. They don't know anything from a wrench to a bolt. They don't know nothing, but they know how to sell the product. So, and they don't make no appointments or nothing. They just show up with a briefcase and a brochure and they catch the first dude that's outside. Okay. And that's how they do. That's their tactic, right? And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Or you get people who would just give you a cold call and they want to set up a meeting and then they want to give you a whole presentation and then they start their whole spiel on trying to sell you, right? Whatever that pattern that they're using to attract people to their service is what you need to understand. And then the last thing you need to understand is how are they all competing against each other, right? When you're in business, you will be stealing somebody's customer. I use the word steal because they might be loyal to you today and might be loyal to somebody else tomorrow and might go to somebody else the next day, right? So How are they all jumping in the pool and saying, no, come to me, no, come to me, no, come to me, right? What are you doing, or what are they doing that is causing these customers to be loyal to them, or to repeat the purchase, that they're doing with that customer? What is it about them that, why do people keep going to get this flat chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A? It's not like it's the thickest piece of chicken. All they got is one chicken, one piece of lettuce, and maybe a half a pickle. But they wait in line for it. Why? Why are they doing that? Is it more because somebody's out there waiting on them, or is it the taste of the food? Is it because of the way they advertise? How are they competing against Wendy's? They have the same chicken sandwich, more pickles, more chicken, more mayonnaise, more everything. But there's a competition there. Or maybe McDonald's. McDonald's has a chicken sandwich, or they have some sort of a sandwich. How are the three of them competing against each other for the same customer that want the same type of chicken sandwich, right? Think about that. That is your buying power, your buying patterns. And what niche are they using? That unique thing that makes them different, right? And when you think about that, now you're going to narrow down who really is truly your main competitor. Now, early on, you did like a competitive comparison just to kind of look on the surface who's in your area. With this one, you're actually really validating who is really your main competitor. Who are you really going up against? That that the moment that you put your for sale sign out there saying, hey, I am offering services, that next company is looking and they're going to be like, oh no, we have somebody come in the neighborhood, and next thing you know, they have sale signs out or they have advertisements out to try to stay ahead of you, to keep that competitive edge, right? So I want you guys to think about that as you are, having this little time off, because when you come back, you're going to be finished in that section. Or you can start working on it if you want to. The other thing that I posted in the class is um, just some information about your startup budget. Okay, so tonight, over the last couple of weeks, really, we talked about money. What is your relationship with money? How are you going to manage your money effectively so that you can build financial wealth for yourself, and also a way to manage your business finances? Okay, you didn't heard from Sharon, Ashley, and Ken, and me. So after all of that, you guys should be able to do a budget. So I actually posted some documents in the classroom for you guys to download and use however you want to use. Also, make sure that you are working on your final presentation. So again, we're going to be doing final presentation. So part of that is your financial plan. You should have at least one slide that talks about what your startup costs are, and or potential startup costs, and what money are you going to need to operate your business. At least on a slide, you should have at least one slide that talks about that. Okay? And I'm going to make sure you guys remember that. On weeks 9, 10, we're going to be doing presentations, and we're also going to be getting everybody's student testimonials for the class, to share with EDC about your experience and what you learned and things like that. And also, I'm going to be posting a link again to the sign up sheet. I saw people went in and actually signed up, but I'm going to post it again because we have quite a few people who have not. And if you haven't signed up by week 8, I'm just going to plug your name in on the night that you're going to do your presentation. So next week, we're going to cover presentation questions, and we're going to cover a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Yes, I did. It's in the coursework for a template for the final presentation. You can use whatever platform you want. You can use Word, turn it into a PDF. You can use Canva. You can use whatever you want, because I'm going to give you access to share your own screen so you can advance your slides. Okay. I also posted in the classroom a six slide deck that talks about the best practices of doing a business pitch. So if you get a chance to look at that, it's in there to give you some do's and don'ts, maybe some little practices. And if you also have not seen the video that I did on speaking, you may want to check that out as well. We had that webinar on how to use effective speaking for your business. You can use that to help you with business pitching, to talk about what you're going to do and all that kind of stuff. So, other than that, this has been a lot of information. So, I'm going to open the floor for any last questions or anything you guys. I see one person got an appointment with me tomorrow. We'll definitely do that. But I'm open for anything you guys want to talk about because this was a lot today. And I want you to be able to soak it in. Soak it in. I'm hearing people now, right now. I better get my money together. I gotta get my bank account. Let me see. Have I been in the commingling funds? Let me make sure my coins is right. I don't want Ann to get after me or Ken or anybody else about my money. Oh Lord, I got a business bank account. I better check my balances. I better check my credit. Yeah, a lot of things you're gonna have to think about, right? So you guys are doing very well. You should give yourself a round of applause. You're literally on week 6. Week 6. We only have a few more weeks to go. So I need you guys to pull through. That's right. Bernadette, you ain't even gonna be applying for no business credit until you get your business plan together. Don't be trying. Don't. Nope. Not on my watch. Mm-mm. You ain't ready until you do your business plan. Girlfriend. I'm serious. She's like, I'm gonna do my business credit. She ready. Yeah, you got to get the whole kit and caboodle, guys. Don't jump on the first train because you think it's going in your direction. Okay. Get the information, get the whole picture. That is why you're in this class. You're not going to go out there and start jumping around getting EINs and credit cards and loans until you get the entire picture of your business. Know what you're getting into before, even if you went out there and got your EIN and all that stuff, it doesn't mean nothing until you have everything you need to get started. I'm serious. You can really mess your whole business up by just one mistake, cost you time and money. You don't want to do that. Okay. All right. Yeah, don't be playing. I may be bringing out Paul Anka again. I ain't having no babies. My baby's grown. He said, "No, don't bring that back." That's right, because you're having my baby. That song will live for me forever. Paul Anka was singing, man. That's what that girl said. I don't even know who she was, but she was singing it. Mike said, "Don't sing. It's too late. I already sung the song." Anyway, guys, I know y'all want to hang with me all night, and I appreciate that, but I'm about to kick all of y'all off of this video. Unless you have a specific question that you want to ask me, girlfriend is going to sleep because I got a lot of work to do this week. And also remember, there is no webinar tomorrow. Webinar has been moved to April 8th, so please don't show up. Go, and why are we not talking about capability statements? Because Anne has to get some important things done before Monday. At least that's what I'm trying to do. I got a lot of work. I love you all. You're doing a good job. You're doing great.
Thanks, Ann.
Thanks, Anne. Good night. Thank you,
Good night,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
No problem.
Good
All
night,
right.
everyone.
Oh, yes, it. All right, Kendra, get on my calendar. Yeah, get on my calendar.
Sure will.
Yep, yep, yep. Bye, Kendra. Okay, ladies.